What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next I'm going to talk about 5 different spec books for one character that I think you should be looking to pick up right now. Stay tuned. Alright, before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So, I had been thinking about some of the, I'll call them spec books that I had purchased over the last year. And for me, when I'm talking about a spec book, I'm not necessarily talking about a book that's like a dollar bin, 50-cent type book that you're waiting for some potential news to pop off to see a big spike. What I like to buy is I like to buy established keys. So books that are keys for characters that we know are coming, that are already set up in future movies, future properties within Marvel, that kind of thing, but we just haven't seen the books really move yet. You haven't had that big announcement yet, a trailer that really drives up the prices. And a couple examples from the last year that I've had like that are the early Eternals book, Eternals 1, 2, 3, and 5, as well as Special Marvel Edition 15. I bought just tons of both of those types of books about the middle to late last year. And even though I know people didn't really care for the Eternals trailer all that much, those books are still up a lot. And I still think that movie is going to be fantastic. And we're going to be surprised when we do see the next trailer that comes out. But there's other reasons why I like to buy those keys like that, is that they already have an established value. There's a lot lower risk when you're buying a book like that. There's a lot of people that want those books regardless. They're just cool books regardless. It's not something that potentially, if that book doesn't hit, if there's no news about that character, that it just ends up filling long boxes in your house. So I like buying those more established keys. That reduces that risk. And so I've been trying to think of other characters that meet that criteria. And you don't have to look very far to see examples where you have characters that you knew were coming, that there's been news for, and then you have just massive spikes in the price when some piece of official big news comes out. I mean, like Eternals and Special Marvel Edition, those are 2 examples, but also Kang with Avengers 8. There had already been the news that character had been cast, but then once people saw him, those prices just went nuts. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And one that really jumped out to me was him or Adam Warlock. And I do want to make a comment. After I had put together kind of my notes and everything for this, I saw that Journo had just made a video on Warlock, so I'm hoping we don't cover the same material. I haven't watched his video yet, so anything that I have here should be different, hopefully, and I maybe take a little different take on it. But I am going to talk about 5 keys for him or Adam Warlock. And the reason I really like this character as a speculation type buy is that we saw the cocoon that he's in at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. We also heard them say his name. They said Adam. And so we know this character is coming. Marvel does not put these types of teasers in the major post-credit scenes without eventually using that character. And Warlock, or him, or Adam Warlock, whatever you want to call him, he has played a very significant role, especially when you're talking about cosmic Marvel. And we know that Marvel is expanding outside of just the street level type fights and movies. They're going cosmic, and that's a big part of their future. And so I think that could be a really big character moving forward. Now, I don't know exactly when that character is going to be showing up. That's one thing I usually do like to have. I do like to know that, we have the Eternals movie coming, or we have the Shang-Chi movie coming. In this, I'm making an assumption that we're going to see that character in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He may not be the main antagonist in that movie. It could be that it's another kind of a teaser type with that character, or it could be that he becomes that main villain in that movie. But we know that character has played kind of 2 sides of the coin. He's been a bad guy, but he's also been a good guy. And so he's one of these characters, I think like Loki, that could have potentially a lot of longevity in the MCU because of that, because he can start off as a villain and eventually turn into a character that people love and ends up being kind of more on the hero side. So what I did is I picked the 5 books that I think are the biggest keys for that character, and I looked at how they've performed over the last year to try to identify which ones look like they are the best books to buy right now. Now you could just buy all of them. That's more or less what I'm probably going to end up doing. But if you want to focus on just a couple, I'm going to go through those numbers and we'll talk about those different books. All right, so I'm going to talk about these in the order that they came out, so their order of appearance. And so the first one is Fantastic Four, number 67. This book came out in 1967. It's the first cameo of him, or Warlock. In this case, he's just called him. And you only see him right at the end of that issue, but you do actually see him. He comes out of the cocoon. And what I did to compare these books is I looked at the most common grade. So if you've seen any of my top 10 type videos where I'm comparing books within a series, I look at the most common grade for that book so that I can compare books across multiple years. And so for this book, the most common grade is a 7.5. And a year ago, it was $325. And today, it's $575. So that's an increase of 75%, which is respectable, but not as much as we've seen with a lot of other keys that I've talked about in other videos, where we've seen books move up 150, 200%. All right, so now let's move on to the second book. So the next time that we see him is in Thor number 165 in 1969. Now, this is the first full appearance of him. He's actually on the cover. It's a great cover. It's also a dark cover, so it can be tough to get in high grade. The most common grade for this book, also a 7.5. So you can see 2 years later, and the grade is the same for the most common grade. So that's one of those things that tends to tell you that it was harder to get a higher grade in that book, that the common grade stayed the same even after a couple of years. Now, the price a year ago was about $450 for that 7.5. The price today is about $725. Now, that's an increase of 60%, but it had been up more than that. It had actually been up higher, but we've seen some recent pullbacks in that book. So that's just something, I think to keep note of, is that when I see prices of books get higher like that and pull back, I often look at that as kind of like seeing the future of the book. That's what I did with Eternals, where you saw Eternals spike to, it was like 2,000 or 2,500 right when the news came out. Then it fell down to around 1,000. Then it went back up to about 3,000, even a little more than that. And so when I see things like that, that's telling me when it's a character I know that's going to come, it's kind of giving me a future of a minimum where I think that book is going to go. And so today, though, sitting at $725, up 60%. Now, the next time we see him is not for 3 more years, and that's in Marvel Premiere number 1. And this is the first time he's actually called Warlock or Adam Warlock. And most common grade for this book is an 8.5. Again, very dark cover, a lot of black on this cover, so it is harder to get in a higher grade. Price a year ago, $325. Price today, $700. So it's up 115%. And this one was up way more. It was up over 200%. This one has come back quite a bit. It had spiked a lot in those peaks that we saw in kind of the May, early June period, and it's seeing some retracement on those prices. Now, that's the thing I like to talk about, though, is that, yeah, we've seen prices maybe come down on that book 50%, but the book is still up 115%. So that shows you how much that book had moved, over 200%, still up a lot from last year. Now, the next one, this is one that I don't think gets talked about quite as much, but I think is another good option. Again, a tough book to get in high grade, and this is Warlock number 1. It came out very soon after Marvel Premiere number 1, also in 1972. And this is his first solo series. So when we're talking about characters like Moon Knight, where that character has gotten very popular, his early appearances have gotten very popular and expensive, people start moving on to things like first solo series. So the first self-titled series, Moon Knight. This is that book for Warlock. So this is Warlock number 1. Most common grade is an 8.5. This is a much more affordable book. A year ago, it was about $80, and today it's about $175. So it's up quite a bit, up 120%. But for me, I tend to like to purchase books that are a little more expensive than that. I usually like to be at least in kind of the $400 to $1,000 range. That's me. Whatever works for you and your budget, then go for that grade. But so for me, I would aim for a higher grade, something that would get me more into the maybe $300, $400, $500 range. But that's a book. It's up 120%. So maybe we want to steer clear of that one. I'll talk about these all a little bit later in a comparison. Now, the last one, and this one I feel like is a little bit more on the spec side of things, something that we might see with that character. and that's Strange Tales number 178. And this was in 1975, so again, 3 years later. And this is the first time you have the Warlock as the Magus. The Magus is essentially kind of like his evil counterpart. And when you're getting into things like time travel and multiple realities and everything that we're starting to see with these movies and what's being planned for Marvel, I think it is very possible that we could see a character like the Magus show up. And he is a big villain. He is basically trying to take over all universes, and wants everything under his control. I think his group is called the Universal Church of Truth. And so I think this could potentially be a very big book, an important book to get. Now, the most common grade in this one, because it is a little bit later, is a 9.4. And a year ago, that 9.4 was going for $275. Today, it's $425. But again, this is another book that's pulled back. It's up only 55% right now, but it was up quite a bit more than that. And a lot of that was driven by a really big 9.8 sale. It was a 9.8 sale of, I believe, over $9,000, and that really started to bring up the prices of these other books. All right, so now we've got 5 books. I think 5 big keys for him. We've got his first cameo appearance, his first full appearance, first time he's called Warlock, first solo series, and the first time he appears as the Magus. So what I've done is I've put all those books next to each other so you can see them all and compare them all, and you can see that I have highlighted 2 of them. So there are 2 that I think are probably the best books to buy right now based on how these other books have moved. Now, I do definitely recommend all of them. Just for clarity, I currently own Thor 165. I have 2 copies of Marvel Premiere number 1, and I have a copy of Strange Tales 178. I don't own a copy of Fantastic Four 67 yet, and I don't own a copy of Warlock number 1 yet, but I am on the lookout for both of those books. So with this here, you can just see easy comparison where you've got what's important about each of those books. Like I said, you've got the first cameo of him, the first full appearance of him, first appearance of Warlock, first solo series, and first Magus. You can see what the prices are of the most common grades of those books. You can see a lot of those in those grades right now are in the $400 to $700 range. Warlock number 1 is a book that doesn't really have anything super key about it. It's just that first book in that series. And so it doesn't tend to command quite as much value as these other ones that actually have first appearances in them. So that's definitely a book that you can find that's a little more affordable, even in some of these higher grades. But if these prices are outside of your reach, just reduce the grade some, go for a lower grade. I think all of these books are great options. Now, you can see with the percentages that they've moved, the reason that I think Fantastic Four 67 and Thor 165 are the best purchases right now is that they are just not up that much compared to other books in the comic market today, even after recent pullbacks. With Fantastic Four 67 only being up 75%, and Thor 165 only being up 60%, I think those are really, really good books to pick up right now. Now, like I said, Strange Tales 178, I do think is also a good book to pick up, but it is a little bit more on the spec side. It's less certain when you're talking about that book because I don't really know if we'll see that version of the character. But the other ones are all basically just him or Warlock, and we know we're going to see that character. All right, so with that, I hope you found this useful. Hope this helps with any of your speculation type buys, or if you're looking to pick up any of these books, kind of give you an idea where they are and how some of them have pulled back recently. So it really might be a good time to go after some of those books. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. Got videos right here that you can click on if you'd like to watch those, and the subscription button right here. I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.